to go ahead and get started, and to be mindful of time, I'll be very brief. And of course, if there's any questions that you have, you can email Emily or myself, and we'd be happy to elaborate a little bit more. But when we're talking about deepening student learning, I think the best place to start is to really reflect on your own educational path as a student, and think about the lessons that your teachers taught or your teachers held that really stuck with you. So even now in your adult years, what are the lessons, what are the classrooms, what are the teachers that you look back and remember exactly, I did that, oh my gosh, that was so much fun. Well, that's kind of what you want to put in your students' minds. That's what you want to offer them. I remember in 3rd grade reading a story in our text that was actually a play format, and we loved it so much. So our 3rd grade teacher said, okay, well, let's do it. Who wants this part? Who wants this part? And she turned it into this supplemental project, but it became so interesting. We were very engaged. Or in 7th grade, when we were learning about ancient Egypt, we mummified a chicken and had a full-on burial around the school. It was really fun. And of course now, in my mid-30s, I still remember that, and I can talk to you about it for hours, I feel, because it really engaged me and it really left an imprint. Specifically in deepening student learning, we talk, well, this is a great way to start, right? This is what we're up against. The constant conflict of what the teacher's role is and what we're competing against when kids are at home in their truest element. Technology, media, social interactions. You have to be just as engaging and just as captivating as these devices, and of course everything that's going on in our day-to-day. So it's definitely a challenge that we are facing. So when thinking about how to get students' attention, how to motivate students, how to deepen their learning, and how to build retention, it's really about what can you offer them that's going to make them fully engaged and fully interested in what you're saying. There has to be buy-in, there has to be desire, but then you also have to present it in a very accessible and obtainable way for them. When you engage your students, these are some great ways to start. So let's be very creative with our lesson plans. And I believe that the first and the second bullet, thoughtful and varied pedagogical practices, they go together. So instead of lesson plans that are just straight out of the book or something maybe that you inherited, really think outside the box and think, what can I do? These are my objectives. This is what I want to get. This is where I want to be at the end of this lesson or the end of this unit. But what can I do? How can I shock my students? If we're talking about, for instance, in 1st grade, we do a lot of fantasy and adventure tale, and we have a whole week where we come dressed up as pirates. We turn my classroom into a pirate ship. They call me Captain Grattan. We make pirate stew. If you have that ability to do that, that's great, but those kids love it. Those kids are completely saturated with the idea of writing these adventure tales, because everything that they're living and breathing for that week is scaffolding those components that you would want in an adventure tale. Designing and implementation of assessments, it doesn't always have to be tests, right? We can do group projects, we can have portfolios, dioramas, things that will tap into your students' different learning styles and will really shake things up, so the monotony doesn't come over, and again, another thing you have to compete with. And then lastly, methods of questioning and fostering discussion. So your Teach Like a Champion book, you are all masters now in how to engage your students in discussion. You all have tons of strategies, your turn and talk, your batch processes, how to get your students talking, how to get your students interested, how to tap in their prior knowledge, and how to really support them in creating a safe place for them, a safe space for them to offer those ideas. I found this, it is very elementary, but I really liked it because it talks about the ways that you as a teacher can do things in your classroom and scientifically how they infiltrate your students' brains. So it's funny, so bear with me. My 11 rules for engaging students' brains, an unscientific list from a regular teacher. Make sure students know that brains can grow and change and get smarter. Make sure students feel safe and valued. Then make it fun. Laughter releases endorphins. This is a good thing. So in all these parentheses, they tell you how it really does impact the brain. Have students make predictions. Our brains love this, especially when we're right. Make it visual. That stimulates the visual cortex. Get students moving. That stimulates the motor cortex. Get students talking. That stimulates Wernicke's area. Get students listening to you and to each other. That stimulates Broca's area. Help students make connections between what they are learning and what they already know. Grow those dendrites. Do something new. Brains love novelty. Play music. Studies show that brains focus better when music is turned off, so use it for transitions. And repetition. Brains need repetition to remember, and this will hit the hippocampus of the brain. Repetition, really, repetition, 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 repetition. And then lastly, this is an engagement wheel, and it's been adapted from David Slatke's. He does incredible research on motivating students. You can use this in different ways if you find him on the internet or in any of his articles he's written. There's an actual formula of how to implement this into your classroom. You could just look at this and simply spin it and see where it lands, or you can look at it before and think, okay, what do I want to do? What do I want to do today? Okay, students were out of their chairs for at least one activity during class. Okay, good, I did a good job. So this can be before you start your lesson. This can be at the end of the day if you want to do some self-reflecting and see how did I do. But all of these areas, A through J, are really great for encouraging students' engagement and really stimulating themselves in ways where you're going to build great retention, and you're going to really allow them to, when they walk out of the classroom, to take away the objectives and hopefully much more. So thank you very much. Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so as far as the book